Hi all, hope you had a wonderful break and a very happy new year to you all. Today we're going to be working on a software called Davinci Resolve. This software is an industry-based software. A lot of the filmmakers, lot of the post-productionists, a lot of the studios use Davinci Resolve to do the last part of filmmaking, which is called color grading or color correcting. I will be explaining more in detail about the difference between the grading side and the color correction side as well. We'll be looking at the secondary correction and primary corrections as well, how we can analyze an image, how we can adjust an image, how we can play with the secondary color grading, from the tracking, from the node base, layering. So hopefully we'll try to explain as much as possible, and I promise you I'll be to the point, and hopefully I'll be giving you some video files as well to work with. But I would advise you to use some of your footage which you've already have done, you know, your files, your VFX files as well, so just to analyze your own footage as well, which is quite good. And I'll be going in more details as well. So looking at Davinci Resolve, here is one of the scenes. Obviously just ignore this part here. I was working on this, and I just wanted to quickly run this. It's very similar to Nuke, where you're doing tracking of this, and you can actually see that I've got different nodes there, and every node has a different significant color grade to it. So basically I've color corrected here, and then here I've done a key marks and all that. So if I just zoom into that, you can see that here I've done some keying, again color correction, again I've masked here. If I just do a Control D, from here we can just kind of look at the parts here. So just don't worry about too much. I'll have a full lab on how we do the secondary color correction. But to start with, I just want to quickly introduce why Davinci Resolve. So basically it comes with a full-on package. So you got your media here, so I'll import all my media here, and then you have your editing side of it. So this is a full-on post-production package as well, like Premiere Pro, so which is quite amazing. I've tested it out. It's got things like multicam edit, which you probably did in the second year when you were working on Premiere as well. Very much similar to Premiere, but very industry standard as well. Although it's free, but amazingly you can do everything apart from rendering it out on above 4K, and I don't think so we need above 4K for our course. But if you do wish to buy the full version, the only difference between the full version and the free is to do the 3D stereoscopic imaging. Doesn't allow to save above or render above 4K, and thirdly, it doesn't have a noise reduction plugin. So I mean, if these three things, you might not need it, but the rest, everything's the same. Saving properties, nothing is unhighlighted apart from those three things. So moving on from there, I can show you. So once you've got your edit sorted, so I'm not going to go too much in this editing post-production side of it. I'm sure you guys have done quite a lot of editing in your first, second years. So basically just putting the footage together, lining them up together, and then you move into the actual output of the render settings as well, where you have your own custom settings, how you want to output your work. And then you've got different sources there. You've got Premiere, you've got Avid, you've got Pro Tools, if you want to output to Pro Tools or audio only. So it's quite a really high-end. I mean, looking at these packages, they're really industry softwares, and they're all linked up with Davinci Resolve, which is quite a big deal. for the post productionists who are into color grading. Back in the days, it would be that one person would do color grading, and he will send his work to the actual post productionist, and then it comes back again, and then again it goes into the sound design. So you can imagine a lot of packages were kind of a lot of data was going left, right, center. But here you got all in one. And the cool thing about it is when you download Davinci Resolve 15, you'll have Fusion as well, which is a VFX package, which is not going to be new for you because it's a node base, and it's worth exploring that as well. The first time when you open DaVinci Resolve, it will be a total blank screen. I've got a few projects which I was working to create this tutorial, but to start with, my advice for everyone to be is make sure that you start saving all your work on your actual external hard drive rather than your internal, which is on your computers. Firstly, we're going to create a new database, and you say create, and I'm going to just name my database, let's say NM 2019 DaVinci Resolve, there we go, the Resolve. So, and I'm going to just simply get it on my desktop or on my hard drive. I'm going to say cancel now, but I've already created a database, so make sure you do create a database, and it's all about the XMLs as well. I will be taking you through during the lecture why creating a database and why it's important, but at this stage just simply just follow the instructions. Just make sure that you create a database. I'm going to just say cancel that because I've done it already. Once you've got your database sorted, I can just simply go to new projects, and I'm going to say NM DaVinci Resolve 2019, nearly said 18, excuse me, and if I say create, and as soon as I say create, if I just click on the media pool here, there's nothing there. Now on your source files, on your OneDrive, you'll see the link on the actual Moodle area. You just simply need to import the primary color correction folder, which is, if I just want to create a new bin is kind of creating a new folder itself. So if I just say come right down here, if I just do a right click, add bin, and I'm going to just say primary corrections. Okay, so I've got my primary corrector there. If I say return, and on here I'm going to just simply do a right click and import media. Just found my folder which is called one primary colors. So just highlight all of these files and just open them. Okay, so I've got this kind of message saying the clip has a different frame rate than the current project settings. So it could be that I was using some different frame rates when I was working on another project. It might come up because we have the clips which I've given for this tutorial to work, the different frame rates. So I'll just say change, so it will kind of change to its own best settings. So let me just go and click change, and now I've got all these clips ready to go. Right, so now this is my media pool, and my media pool, I've got my bin, which is all here. So hopefully we're going to carry on doing every week. We'll work on secondary color correction next week, and then we go on to the node base, and then we can kind of work out through the same kind of folder. That's why it's important for you to get your hard drives so that we can you can always be on board with that. Having said that, you're welcome to use your own clips as well if you feel that you've shot something and you want to just do a color correct to it, which is a primary color correction, not the secondary. So today's lab is all about looking at primary color correction, how to analyze the footage, how to actually look at the footage and think of the shadows and the highlights and stuff. Okay, so starting with, I want to just move on to my edit page. And my edit page is, I've got all my footage there, and what I'm going to do is simply just bring in a kind of a random selection. I'm going to just bring in this footage down here. There we go. And I'm going to just get let's say, for example, if I want this shot as well. So I've got two different shots there which I want to work with. So I'm going to work with this. We're going to read and analyze this shot here, and we're going to analyze this shot as well. Okay. And I'm going to just add this shot as well. This is quite a drained out shot as well, and you can see that I've got the audio there as well, and that's a cool example. If I were to just quickly show you on the actual Fairlight there, I've got the audio right there, and you can see there's timing, there's no audio here, audio comes in, so it's really a thorough package where it just gives you dead on where the audios are. Okay, so roughly I'm happy with my edit. Of course, a professional editor would go in to start analyzing the footage, but really we're here to really learn the color panel. So once I'm happy with my little edit, I'll simply switch to color panel, and I'm going to take you through this. And throughout this few weeks, we're going to just really be working on these panels. We're going to look at the wheel rings. We're going to look at the primary bars, analyzing the footage itself, looking at the blacks and the whites. Okay, so once we're in the color space, what we can do is simply go on the workspace and go to reset UI layout. Now you can see a lot of layouts there. You got your primary layout, media, edit, color, Fairlights. You can obviously skip from here as well, or you can simply click from one side to another side as well. But here I want you all to just go and reset the UI layout, so that means we're all on the same page. If you are using a laptop, if you have uploaded, a lot of the icons will be shrinked, but they're all going to be there, so hopefully we're going to be all on the same page when we're doing this tutorial now. Right, so on the dead center, we got the playhead, and this is where most of our editing, most of our viewing would be. So that's why it's always advisable to have your secondary monitor, so you can always check. But for this exercise, for this course, we've got only one monitor, and hopefully that monitor is calibrated, so we can get pretty much true colors throughout these tutorials. Now that's my playhead, and that's the node tree here. So for example, if I create a node here, so let me just delete this node first of all. Let me just double click on it and then backspace, so that's deleted. So I'm going to create a new node, do a right click, add node, corrector, and if I just move my node straight away near to the line, the plus sign comes up. That means it's ready to connect. Or if you are creating a node, if I just press a backspace to delete these, I can simply go and connect from one point to another point, and that's my end point there. So you have primary node here, and then you can start doing your secondary and primary gradings throughout the whole kind of course. So we'll go in more depth in that. So with the node tree, we organize our any particular grade. Right, so moving on from the nodes, we move on to the timeline here. So if I just even go on my arrows on my keyboard, I can go frame by frame, or I can just simply click from one switch to another switch there. If I click on the timeline up here, if you kind of notice that you've got your V1, your video one, comes in, and then you can even loop the shot. So if I just want to click on here and just simply click on this loop on, and I just start playing this shot so that we can see how we can manipulate as well. So mainly on the left you have got your primary two colors. For example, you got your color match, your main wheels, your RGBs, and then you have for your secondary you've got your main qualifier, the Windows tool where we're going to be going through your tracker, your sharpness, your blur and sharpness as well. So these are the main kind of windows, and on your desktop probably it's kind of split. So these from basically from your curves tool, it's probably somewhere down here. And on the right window, what we have is the keyframing, and we'll be covering quite a lot of keyframing because, for example, if I have this shot starting from this point, if I want it black and white to color, and from color to black and white, so these keyframes are quite important, and it will work on every individual shot. Okay, so now let's read an image with scopes, and this is one of the most essential and basic skills where a color grader would have to read the actual image itself. So these scopes basically gives you a mathematically accurate reading of the brightness and contrast of any given image. So for example, if I want to go on this image there, it will actually give me a solid image. So let me start with going on, just simply clicking on this point here, because we're not going to work on nodes today. I will be touching on that, but let me just simply click on this point there where it expands the actual footage there. Let me just go right into that, and at the moment I'm on the keyframe. Just make sure you click on this point here, the scopes. Okay, and what we're looking at, if I just go and click on the parade monitor, just go on the actual waveform, and here I can just simply start looking at my waveform. And what I would like you to do is just simply, if I click on here and just go on rather than on the RGB, I would like you to just go on the grayscale, which is the black and white, because you can go individually as well to look at your simple RGB kind of waveforms. But let me just go on white cell so that we can just kind of look at that. I can kind of highlight, I can kind of make it more brighter. It's really up to you how you want to experiment with that. So let me just bring this kind of the actual lines as well, where we can make that nicely. And if I move that up, never ever judge an image by just simply looking at it, because our human eye can be mistaken all the time, because the more you look at the image, the more you will start liking the image. So it's always good to just reflect back and use the scopes, and it's highly recommended that whenever you are especially as a color grader, as a post-productionist, you have to have a clear understanding of scopes. And also remember that even if you're not using a professional monitor, even the monitors which we have in at MMU are quite professionally highly calibrated monitors. But if you're using a normal monitor as well at home, these scopes won't change. So it's always good to just really understand how to read an image. So for example, you've got your zeros and you got your 1023, where if I just remind you, in Photoshop it's zeros and 100, and here it just steps a little bit further, which is more like a film terminology rather than a still image. So you got your zeros, which are all the kind of your shadows, okay, and your highlights are right on the top, okay. And at the moment, if I look at this clip here, if I move my cursor, and you can see that the scopes, the lumiform is really moving alongside, especially when this car has moved, and especially when the gentleman looks on the other side, you got this smoke there. So how can we read the scope here, and how can we represent different aspects? So the value of 0 and 1 will give us our darkest black, and the value of 1223 will give us a pure white or brightness value. Also, when you look at your actual scopes, that we never get information vertically from the actual scopes itself, but we get it horizontally, so all the information is all horizontally based rather than vertically. So just make a note of that, because sometimes when we are looking at the scopes, we can kind of start looking at different aspects. So for example, let me give you a quick example. So let's look at this car passing by. It's coming in, and you can see at the moment I've got this car coming from this point here. So that's my darkest point there. Okay, so watch very carefully what happens to this form. Comes right down. So if I just move in, see that? It's moved. And now let's get the darkest part there. Okay, so looking at this car there, what do you think? Where is the tire on this? So that's kind of the darkest part there. That's the shadow there. And you've got your darkest part there. So I believe that that's your tire. Okay, so coming from this point, and that's your kind of shadow there. So if I just kind of keep going, again I can see that I've got another tire there, and that will simply pass by. Okay, and this is how you kind of start reading the shadows and the dark parts of an image. Okay, now let's take a look at the highest reading, which is the contrast reading. So if I just go somewhere down here, okay, and that's our highest reading up here. Now it's basically really touching 768 and working on what the highest reading would be. This is basically the sky here. Okay, and then you've got this little gap here. This gap is this gentleman's head. Okay, and just right down here, if you can see, and that's where you got your if I just move this right down, you can see that if I just kind of, as soon as the gentleman moves his head, and that's where you see that there's a gap between that two. So that's from this point to that point, and then if you move on, and that's my highest point there, that's the cloud comes in, and we are happy with that. And this is how you kind of start reading your highest points here. Okay, so if I just move this back with my mouse, and if I just kind of bring this back and say fit, there we go. I'm going to just simply go on my lift tool and just simply lift my blacks first. So just bring it down. There we go. And then I'm going to go on my gain, okay, and gain that up. So you see what's happening? I just want to touch that. It's kind of, I can still see that there's some bits and pieces. There we go. So that's probably the smoke comes in, my highest point. See that the smoke is still moving. So somewhere down here, if I just kind of start moving my gain point, and pretty much happy. I don't want to crush this down, so that I'm going to start. I don't want to lose information. So as soon as I start doing that, you kind of start losing information. So let's bring it down a little bit down, and there we go. So that's my first point of reference, where I can clearly see that now all my blacks and my highlights are nicely balanced out. And then let's go on the gamma part, and I can just kind of bring that slightly in a bit so you can see it's not washed out. See, at the moment it was somewhere down here. I can now bring this down, this cursor, and then bring the wheel down a little bit so that it doesn't look all washed out. So there we go. So that's my first part of my color correction. So now I would like to get you to go back on the your actual timeline. So let's go back on your timeline, and if you can just have a think about working on these two shots and see where can you adjust your shadows and your highlights. So for example, if I start you with this car here, so let's analyze this shot. So let me just go and open up. So if I can just expand my shot to just see, right? So if you can see from this scope here, how can you analyze this scope? So where are my shadows lying here? So I can clearly see that this is this part here, that's my shadow there, and then obviously my tire comes in. And just remember that, because this is a good example as well. If you ever given an image for color grading and it's got blacks as well, you know, you got your blacks on the top and the bottom, that represents somewhere down there. See that? So it's got some space there. So you see it's purely cut from this point and purely cut from that point as well. But that shouldn't be an issue, because as long as you understand how to read a scope. So from this point is your highlights, sorry, your shadows, that's the tire there. Okay, we come in, and this point there, it's got a huge gap from this point to that point, so that's from here to here. Okay, and then you've got your tire again, which is kind of starts from this point here. That's my highlights, my shadows, and then you can see your highlights comes down here. That's your round shape. Okay, and my highest point is somewhere down here, which I believe it's somewhere down that point. Okay, so that's my main gain point. So if let me just bring up the gain a little bit. Excuse me. So if I just bring up the gain slightly here, and then I'm going to lift up my actual shadows. So just bring this down a bit. There you go. Okay. So if I again press on my Control D, so that was, see that how the shadows are related now. There we go. And I can just adjust my little gamma just to give it a bit more kind of depthiness. Is the more I bring down, that it gives you kind of more like a kind of a look as well. There you go. So that's finalized there.